Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. Welcome for a wonderful show today, a show that's for you and about you. Those of you that work so hard for your money and you're ready for your money to start working harder for you now. You want that freedom, you want that cash flow, that prosperity today, not waiting 30 or 40 years from now, if you're lucky in the stock market, hoping that someday you might be able to retire and have some sort of crappy fixed income freedom. That's not what we're here about today, guys, because we're here about creating freedom and cash flow now so you can use those years and the things that you love to create a life of living, of purpose, of legacy, and be a rippler by creating a ripple effect through the lives of others by blessing them with the gifts and the talents that you have versus just living in survival. And guys, thank you so much for allowing me to create a ripple effect through you, because through this show, you guys have been amazing. You've been binging, you've been sharing with others. The show just keeps growing, and that's all because of you. So thank you for doing that and for applying these things in your life. As a reminder, check out our website, moneyripples.com. There's, again, the great blogs on there. And remember to subscribe not just to our show, but even to our YouTube channel. You can also see there on our website, so check it out. Today, guys, so I've got a special guest here. So I've got Max Keller. So Max here, the thing that I love is that this guy has so much experience in the real estate space, right? He's been an active investor for many, many years. He's a real estate investor. He's a best-selling author. He's got tons of books out there. He's a highly sought-after consultant, speaker, and an expert panelist on the topic of lead generation and marketing for real estate investors. So if you're an active real estate investor, this is the guy you need to be following. By the way, in just a few short years, Max went from a full-time high school math teacher position to flipping over 100 houses. His unique marketing approach landed him on stage with Robert Kiyosaki, being presented with the 2019 Industry Innovator of the Year award. Fueled by his passion for real estate, Max is still a teacher at heart, and which is something I can definitely relate to. And today he's going to share a strategy that's working right now. So guys, the big thing I want to talk about here is so many of you guys will say, all right, I've got so much money, but how do I get more? How do I create more leverage, right? How do I get more OPM? If I can't get it from the bank, where can I get it? And that's really the topic of the show today. So if you want to figure out how to get more cash in your hand to be able to create better returns, this is who we're talking to here. Max Keller, welcome to our show, man.
Hey, Chris, good to be here. Just glad it's a great day, great weather. We're just gonna make it happen.
That's right, man. At least we're not being hit by hurricanes. That's what matters, you know?
That's right. That's pivotal.
Yep. So tell me, like, how'd you even go from math teacher to being real estate investor? Like, what was that jump? What made that happen?
Sure. Yeah. I was teaching math and I really enjoyed it. I figured that I was going to be a math teacher my whole life, but I wanted to, make it extra income, probably like a lot of people, are listening to the show. And so, like a lot of people, I liked, the house flipping shows. I met some local mentors and kind of always had the mindset that, if I saw somebody else doing something, I could do it too. You just really just need the knowledge. I mean, you need a formula. You have to know what you're doing. And, I had a growing family. You have a large family, and, I do too. We had just had our 5th child. And so, just teaching salary wasn't really enough, and I wanted to have more time freedom and more passive income. So, yeah, just started dipping my toes into real estate. I started out wholesaling, then I was flipping, then I, about one house at a time, and then I started flipping multiples. And then, things kept going, really good. The problem is that my deal flow was exceeding, my funding that I could handle on my own. So I had to reach out to, to banks. I had to reach out and get more financing so I could do more deals and scale up my business.
Yeah.
And this was a new concept for me. And, there's, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of other real estate investors like me who are kind of in the same predicament all the time, especially, now with what's happening with the virus and the disruptions. There's a lot of houses that need to be rehabbed. I mean, every year people move out of them. And so there's a huge market for people, active real estate investors who borrow funds to revitalize these neighborhoods. And so, I started out going the traditional route. I used, all of my, lines of credit and all the things that I qualified for. Then I went to community banks and I found that they were really, they weren't very flexible, especially now. The lending is really, really strange and arduous.
Tricky right now.
Really tricky. So I went the community bank route, and then I started using hard money.
Mhm.
And hard money is a good place to get started,
Yeah.
and it really, helped me understand that relationship. But, I would talk about what I do, and I had local business owners that would reach out to me and say, how could I get involved in this? And they didn't really know what private mortgage lending was,
Mhm.
and how it even worked. So their idea of getting into real estate was like buying a rental. Like, if you find me a
Mhm.
rental, can I buy it, and then can you
Sure.
manage it? And so there's just like, I think that there's a lot of people out there. I know this is the way it was for me. They
Mhm.
kind of know, like, real estate, they're making connections between wealth and real estate, cash
Mhm.
flow and real estate, but what are like the actual step-by-step process to get there? And
Yeah.
that's the part that is a little bit fuzzy. So yeah, just I was flipping more homes, and I started meeting people in my office building, people in my local community that wanted to get involved. I started learning the private lending system and creating a program for my own, and
Yeah.
yeah, started using private funds to take down the deals for short and long term deals, and help investors make great rates of return. And now we've expanded it to an education program where we actually, my partner Brant and I wrote a book, and we use it to teach people how to get involved in the space, because there's you can't just give your money to somebody, and it's not hope estate, it's real estate. So like, there are
Right.
steps, there are checks and balances, and if you've never been in real estate before, it's a great thing. It may be great for you, but I just encourage people to get the education, get the knowledge, really understand, details matter,
Yeah.
the deal matters, who you're working with matters. So that's been the journey for us. We flipped about 120 houses in the last few years here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And, we have rentals, and now, just, I think, being a teacher turned into a whole nother mission, which is now we're on this mission to educate people on private lending and how it works, and what mistakes to avoid.
Yeah. It's a big deal. I mean, I've done it personally as well, like before the last recession, and that was not fun, especially when it was in a real estate deal that depreciated and then couldn't get their money back because there was no liquidity, right? And that was a nerve-wracking place. And there's a lot of liability behind that. I mean, you don't do it right. I mean, it can be a big risk. It's amazing. Like, it creates massive leverage, and it's awesome. It's way better than using banks because it's a lot less red tape to go through. But I mean, you got to be careful.
Yeah, the active, both people do. The
Hmm.
active real estate
Yeah.
investor, from, as when I'm sitting in the seat, because I do both. I lend, my own money, and then I'm an active real estate investor, and I borrow.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when you're borrowing, the mindset that me and Brant have, and in our students who co-author some of our educational books,
Hmm.
trusted experts all over the country, the mindset that we want them to have is, you know, you have to be able to put the odds in your lender's favor,
Hmm.
and just do everything that you can to, like you said, stay liquid, and make
Yeah.
sure that you're borrowing somebody's money, and this is a big deal.
Hmm.
And so, what are your plan? What's the plan B? What's the
Hmm.
backup plans? What are the contingencies? What are do you have the capacity to make somebody whole, even if you don't make a lot of money on the deal or lose money on the deal? Brant and I have been thankful the way that we've structured our deals, going all the way back, Brant, I think, for 13 years, to
Hmm.
where we've never, we've been able to pay every single lender back. And that's super
Hmm.
important. There's kind of two components to
Agree.
that. So if you're passive and you're thinking about maybe getting involved in real estate, step number one, educate yourself, really
Yes.
understand, how to vet a borrower, how to vet a deal, how to make sure that you have your documents set up to where your money is securitized, and it has,
Right. Has collateral.
yeah, it has the collateral, it has the correct forms, and
Hmm.
they're prepared by the right people. These are
Yes.
details matter. So
Hmm.
I would just say education, first, and then make sure that you're working with somebody that, number one, if a deal goes sideways, they take responsibility. We
Hmm.
take personal responsibility for the deals that we borrow. Some people don't. That's okay. Just find out, and then
Right.
and so people don't pay investors back for one of two reasons. They either don't want to, the deal went sideways and that was the risk they took,
Hmm.
or they don't have the capacity. And so,
Yeah.
if people who get involved in private lending, does the person that you're lending to have the capacity to pay you back if something goes wrong in a deal and goes sideways, even if they want to? So those are some things that we, encourage people to really, really learn about as they're, going down the journey.
Yeah. I always remind people if they're being the lender, they got to think of themselves like a bank too. Like there's got to be assets there. There's got to be something to back it up, or what if there's something does go wrong? What's plan B or even plan C in case even plan B doesn't work, right? Where's there some recourse? Do you have even other assets that could possibly have claim? Usually that's going a little bit farther than what most people will do and what you maybe even need to do. But because if the deal's good, if it's got equity, I mean, there's different things you can analyze to see if that's good. But definitely on the borrower side, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility there. So let's kind of go into that as well as why would we want to borrow private capital? Like, why do you think there's such a benefit to that? Despite all these risks and everything else, why should we do it?
And so, one of the great ways is that, just from a benefit to everybody's standpoint, you can help a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's folks right now that are, investing in the, stock market. They don't feel like they have control, and they're not sure if it's going to go, up, down, sideways, or diagonal. And they don't even know about this. It's like a secret club. And so,
Mhm.
when we bring people into our program, they're so excited. It's the peace of mind, and
Yeah.
they know that real estate is there, and if it's insured correctly and they're named, on the insurance policy, like, it
Mhm.
just feels better. It's really the way
Yeah.
to explain it. So from the borrower standpoint, it's great because, number one, working with private lenders, you build relationships where, sometimes you work at banks and other people,
Mhm.
it's kind of, it's just a corporate thing, and it's kind of hard to really get that continuity.
Yeah.
So it's great to build relationships with like-minded people, help them. It's great as a business owner because you can do more deals. Obviously, if you have more funding, it
Mhm.
takes money to do deals and to make, big improvements. And so it's really how you have it structured. If you have it structured to where it's a win-win, then it's good. I mean, you obviously have to know what you're doing. I tell
Mhm.
folks, who are active real estate investors, if they've never done deals or they haven't done a lot of deals, don't borrow from private lenders.
Yeah.
Go and borrow from hard money lenders. Go borrow from banks. Borrow from people who are looking at this all day, because
Mhm.
the last thing that that you want to do is not qualify for a hard money loan
Yeah.
or a bank loan, and then borrow money from a private individual. That is not what you want to do.
Right.
And the same thing, a lot of times the private lenders, they're not as up on this. They made their
Mhm.
money in something other industry. They don't understand real estate that well, and they're just trusting the person. You got to do more
Yeah.
than that. You got to know a little bit about what you're looking at, because
Mhm.
you may have somebody in front of you that just got turned down from a hard money lender. They got turned down from a bank. You're kind of their last hope, and that's not probably the deal that you want to invest in. So it's an education. There's education involved on both sides, and that's what it really takes to make it a win-win.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the thing that's amazing, I mean, not so much my clients, because my clients usually want double digit returns, right? But I'll tell you, like the general population, they horribly question double digit returns. They think that they're like, it's got to be a scam. If you're going to pay me 10, 12%, it can't be legit. It's too good to be true. But you tell them, hey, we'll pay you a steady income of 6% or 7%, they're all over it. They think, well, that's great because that's more than I can pull out from my mutual funds where I'm making 2 or 3% a year. I can make double the cash flow, double the income from the same money, right? And so for them, it's like you said, it's a big win-win, but it's also a win for the person because if they're only paying 6 or 7%, unless you stink at real estate, you should be able to make a lot more profit than that.
Right. Right. And another thing about that, a lot of the demand from people who find out about private mortgage lending to real estate investors who have never, heard of this or done it before, a
Hmm.
lot of the demand comes from the fact that they're not just looking for a return of, they're not just looking for a return on their investment. They're looking for
Yeah,
a return of investment.
that's right.
With some of the other, we'll just pick on the stock market for right now. I
Hmm.
mean, it can, I guess, theoretically go to zero. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that house prices can't go up or down. I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, I can't predict the future, but
Hmm.
just people feel like, okay, I'm looking at a physical building here, and I just don't know how it would ever go down to zero.
It
And
has
so,
intrinsic value.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has a utility, and
Yeah.
so that's really a lot of the draw, and the benefit is there's been folks, and have been, you do this long enough, who lost, I mean, at least in the last recession, the major one, right, or '08,
Hmm.
uh, they lost a lot, and
That's
and it
right.
went, so they lost a lot of principal. It wasn't just the interest, and so those are that's really what drew me into it. I mean, that's what, I didn't even know that existed when I got into real estate. My goal was to get one rental a year. I thought if I
Hmm.
just stay the math teacher, get a rental a year, that'll do something, and then
Hmm.
after 20 years, I'll have some stuff, it'll be paid off. And
Yeah.
there's so many different ways to go. But then I like lending now out of my
Hmm.
own monies, because it's so passive.
Right.
I can drive by the house, if I'm lending to somebody local,
Hmm.
it's insured. If there's a fire or something like that, I can go check on the property. It's somebody that I know, like, and trust. There's
Yeah.
always risk in whatever we do, but that's why I do it, is because it makes me feel good,
Hmm.
and it's just feels like, once you know what's going on, I don't have to spend much time in it. Like, I don't have to go check on the house every day. I don't have to spend hours doing research. I wouldn't
Right.
even know how to do research on some of these companies.
Hmm.
I just, I already have a relationship with the borrower, and I look at their deal, and then I send the money to the title company, and
Hmm.
then, I get either my monthly interest, or, some of my borrowers, I get paid monthly. Some of them we just let it accrue till the end, and
Sure.
then, that's it. I just sign the release form at the end, for the payoff.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's very passive. One thing, Chris, as well as me, we're both really into time, and how
Hmm.
it's, and spending time with our families, and not just being a wage slave.
Yeah.
And time is really important. And so it's not just return. Return is important.
Hmm.
Okay. Return of, your investment, then, what the return is going to be on it. But then
Hmm.
also is, how much time do you have in the deal? Because if two
Yeah.
people make, 10% returns, and it's a certain amount of money at the end of the year in two different investments, they didn't make the same amount. They had different
Right.
time costs involved. They had different emotional costs involved.
Hmm.
So it's just, so I just, from my own personal experience, that's what drew me to private lending,
Hmm.
was because of the time leverage. I don't have to put a lot of my time in. The emotional cost for me isn't very high, because I've researched it and learned, and so I know what it looks like. So I'm going to bed at night fine, and so that's what people can, aspire to, if they've never done it before.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Like that leverage of, I mean, time and energy to me is way more important than money, right? And that's the key right there. And yeah, to leverage that time to be able to say, hey, now I can get the returns, depending on what they look like. Yeah, I agree. And I definitely love what you said too. I mean, it's more important. This is a mantra I use with my clients. It's more important to get return on your money, or return of your money, than it is to get return on your money, right? That's always the first priority, is how do I make sure I get my money back? And then secondly, do I get return on top of it too?
Right.
So yeah, great advice. I really appreciate it, Max. If people want to, like, either like understand more like how to do this for themselves, and I know you've got a lot of great educational tools and things like that, how would they go about reaching out to you, or following you more?
Yeah, so I've got a couple, contact emails and things like that. So why don't
Mhm.
I just, one of them is Max at Savior, SAVIOR Realty,
Mhm.
.com. So they can send me an email there if they want to get access to some educational materials. We've got
Yeah.
some of those. And then you can just, probably easiest where I'm most active is Facebook. So you can just look me up there, Max, N as in Nicholas Keller. And, all my stuff's on there. Send out a message, and yeah, I hope it works out for, everybody. Just explore it and learn about it. My partner Brant and I have a book out, that teaches people how to invest in, private lending if they've never done it before. And
Yeah.
so I'd be more than happy for, folks who reach out to send them a copy, digital or print, and get it into their hands. No problem.
Awesome. Love it, man. Again, thank you so much for your wisdom and your experience and in your advice here. This has been very valuable. So I really appreciate it today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So everybody else, remember, it's not enough to just be a hearer of the word. You got to be a doer as well, right? It's not just enough to like hear it and say, yeah, I get this. It's about, can I actually apply it and make it work in my life so it really translate into real wealth? So that's my challenge to you guys today. Make it a wonderful and prosperous week. And we'll see you later.